Welcome to Scary Hole, where we delve into the darkest corners of the unknown and uncover the spine-chilling stories that lurk in the shadows. If you're fascinated by the eerie and the unsettling, you've come to the right place. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a chilling tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Prepare yourself as we journey into the heart of fear. The Legend of the Blair Witch, a haunting tale from Burkittsville. Nestled in the serene woods of Maryland lies the small town of Burkittsville, a place that seems ordinary at first glance. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll uncover a dark and eerie legend that has haunted this town for centuries. The Legend of the Blair Witch. It all began in the late 18th century with a woman named Ellie Kedward. Accused of witchcraft by the townsfolk, she was banished to the forest during a harsh winter, left to die of exposure. The following year, all of her accusers and half of the town's children vanished without a trace, leading to the abandonment of the town. People whispered that Ellie had cursed the land and that her spirit lingered in the woods, seeking revenge. Fast forward to the 1990s. 3 film students, Heather, Josh, and Mike, decided to make a documentary about the Blair Witch. They were skeptical about the legend, treating it as just another local ghost story. Equipped with cameras and camping gear, they ventured into the Black Hills forest, eager to uncover the truth. The first few days were uneventful, filled with interviews of locals sharing eerie stories and folklore. But as they delved deeper into the forest, strange things began to happen. They found unsettling rock piles and wooden stick figures hanging from trees, markers that locals claimed were signs of the Blair Witch. At night, they heard unnerving noises, branches snapping, children's laughter, and distant whispers. Their compass went haywire, and they found themselves walking in circles, lost and disoriented. The sense of dread grew with each passing day as their supplies dwindled and tensions rose. One morning, they woke to find Josh missing. Despite their frantic search, there was no trace of him. Desperate and terrified, Heather and Mike decided to head back, but the forest seemed to trap them in a relentless loop. That night, they heard Josh's screams echoing through the woods, but couldn't locate him. In their final hours, Heather and Mike stumbled upon an abandoned house. With no other options, they entered, hoping to find Josh. The house was decrepit, filled with strange symbols and markings. As they explored, they heard Josh's voice coming from the basement. Mike rushed down, only to be abruptly silenced. Heather, now alone and petrified, followed, camera in hand. The footage ended with her terrified screams and the camera falling to the ground. The footage of Heather, Josh, and Mike was discovered a year later by hikers, sparking national interest and terror. Though many dismissed it as a hoax, locals knew better. The forest held secrets, and the Blair Witch legend was far from just a story. To this day, Burkittsville remains a place of intrigue and fear, where the line between reality and legend blurs, and the haunting presence of the Blair Witch lingers. The Legend of the Whispering Woods. In the small town of Ravenwood, nestled deep in the heart of the American Midwest, there exists a legend that has sent shivers down the spines of locals for generations. They call it the Legend of the Whispering Woods. One cool autumn evening, a group of friends, Jake, Emily, Mike, and Sarah, decided to venture into the infamous woods. They were seniors in high school, just weeks away from graduation, and looking for one last adventure before they all went their separate ways. The Whispering Woods, known for its eerie silence and strange occurrences, seemed like the perfect spot for a night of thrills. Armed with flashlights and a sense of bravado, they entered the dense forest. The trees, tall and twisted, loomed over them like ancient guardians of secrets long forgotten. The further they walked, the more the silence seemed to press in on them, broken only by the crunching of leaves underfoot and the occasional hoot of an owl. As they ventured deeper, they came upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, dilapidated cabin, its windows boarded up and its wooden walls covered in creeping ivy. A chill ran down Jake's spine as he stared at the structure. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered. Emily, always the fearless one, laughed. "Come on, it's just an old cabin. Let's check it out." Reluctantly, the group approached the cabin. The air grew colder, and a sense of unease settled over them. As they stepped onto the rickety porch, the floorboards creaked ominously. Mike reached for the door handle and gave it a gentle push. The door swung open with a loud groan, revealing a dark interior. Inside, the cabin was filled with dust and cobwebs. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor, and the smell of mildew hung heavy in the air. Sarah shone her flashlight around, illuminating old photographs on the walls, faded images of people long gone. "Let's not stay here too long," Jake said, his voice trembling slightly. Ignoring his warning, Emily wandered deeper into the cabin. She reached a small room at the back and froze. "Guys, come look at this!" she called out. The others joined her, and their flashlights revealed a strange makeshift altar. Candles, long since extinguished, were arranged in a circle around a small, carved wooden figure. Strange symbols were etched into the floor. "What do you think this is?" Sarah whispered. Mike shook his head. "I don't know, but I don't like it. We should go." Just as they turned to leave, a faint whisper filled the air. It was so soft that at first they thought it was just the wind. But the whisper grew louder, forming words that seemed to come from all around them. "Leave this place." Panic set in, and they bolted for the door. As they raced through the forest, the whispers followed them, growing louder and more insistent. "Leave this place." They didn't stop running until they were safely back in Jake's car, gasping for breath. As they sped away, they glanced back at the forest, now shrouded in an eerie mist. The friends never spoke of that night again. They graduated and went their separate ways, but the memory of the Whispering Woods stayed with them. Years later, they learned that the cabin had once belonged to a recluse who was rumored to practice dark rituals. He had vanished without a trace, leaving only the whispers behind. To this day, the people of Ravenwood warn outsiders to stay away from the Whispering Woods. They say that if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispers, urging you to leave before it's too late. And so, the legend of the Whispering Woods lives on, a chilling reminder of the unknown terrors that lurk just beyond the edge of the familiar. Remember, not all stories are meant to be understood, and some places are best left unexplored. The mysterious case of the witch's cabin in New England. In the rural depths of New England, there's an urban myth that still chills the bones of those who hear it. It's the tale of a secluded cabin deep in the woods of Massachusetts, a place whispered about in hushed tones among locals. This isn't a story of witches from long ago, but of a modern encounter that has left a mark on the community. It all started a few years back, when a group of adventurous friends decided to spend a weekend camping in the woods. They'd heard the legend of the witch's cabin, a place rumored to have been the home of a reclusive woman who practiced dark magic. Despite the warnings from the locals, they were eager for a thrill and set out to find the cabin. After a day of hiking, they stumbled upon a small clearing with an old, dilapidated cabin. The structure looked like it had been abandoned for decades, with its wooden walls covered in moss and vines. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to explore. As they entered the cabin, the atmosphere changed. It was cold inside, even though it was a warm summer evening. They noticed strange symbols etched into the walls and old, dusty books scattered on the floor. The place had a heavy, oppressive feeling that they tried to ignore. Laughing nervously, they decided to spend the night there. It wasn't long before things started to go wrong. Strange noises echoed through the cabin, whispers and creaks that seemed to come from nowhere. At first, they brushed it off as the sounds of the forest, but then things started to get more unsettling. The door to the cabin slammed shut on its own, and their flashlights flickered uncontrollably. One of the friends, feeling brave, picked up an old book from the floor, trying to make sense of the symbols on the walls. As he read aloud, the temperature dropped even further, and a dark shadow seemed to loom over them. The friends were now genuinely scared, but they tried to stay calm, telling themselves it was all just a series of coincidences. When they finally decided to leave, they found that their car wouldn't start. The engine was dead, and no matter what they tried, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as night fell, and they realized they were stranded in the middle of nowhere with no way to call for help. In the pitch darkness, they heard footsteps approaching, though no one was in sight. The sounds grew closer and closer until they could almost feel the presence of someone or something watching them. Desperate, they spent the night huddled together, their fear mounting with every passing hour. By morning, they managed to get their car started, though they couldn't explain why it had suddenly started working. They fled the cabin and vowed never to return. To this day, none of them have been able to fully explain what happened that night. The story of the witch's cabin became a local legend, a cautionary tale told to warn others about the dangers of ignoring the past and trespassing into places where they don't belong. The cabin, still standing in its lonely clearing, remains a symbol of the unknown, a place where the boundaries between the real and the supernatural seem to blur. The Black Witch of Bellwood. In the sleepy town of Bellwood, North Carolina, there was an old legend that chilled the bones of its residents. It was the story of the Black Witch of Bellwood, a tale whispered among locals and told in hushed tones around campfires. Though not as well known as the Salem witch trials or the infamous Salem witch, this story had its own dark twist that made it uniquely terrifying. The legend begins with a woman named Agnes Harper, who lived in Bellwood in the late 1800s. Agnes was known for her solitary lifestyle and mysterious demeanor. With a reputation for herbal remedies and odd rituals, she was often shunned by the townsfolk. When strange occurrences started happening in Bellwood, from livestock falling ill to sudden crop failures, the townspeople began to whisper that Agnes was responsible. One particularly cold winter, a young girl from town, Emily Carter, vanished without a trace. The townsfolk were frantic, searching the woods and fields for any sign of her. The only clue found was a trail of strange black feathers leading to Agnes Harper's dilapidated home on the outskirts of town. The feathers were unlike any found in the area, and their sudden appearance added fuel to the fire of suspicion. When the townspeople confronted Agnes, she denied any involvement in the girl's disappearance. However, whispers of dark magic and witchcraft swirled around her. In a town where superstitions ran deep, this was enough to condemn her. Without a fair trial or proper investigation, Agnes was accused of witchcraft and sentenced to be burned at the stake. The night before her execution, a strange storm rolled into Bellwood. Lightning struck with a ferocity that the townspeople had never witnessed, and a deep fog rolled in, covering the town in an eerie, thick blanket. That night, Emily Carter was found wandering the streets in a trance-like state, mumbling incoherently about a dark lady who had taken her into the woods and performed strange rituals. The following morning, Agnes was executed, but the storm had left behind something more unsettling. The townspeople noticed that their shadows seemed to move independently, and a sense of unease lingered in the air. They began to experience vivid, terrifying nightmares about a dark figure watching them from the corners of their rooms. Years passed, but the story of the Black Witch of Bellwood lived on. Some claimed to see Agnes's ghost wandering the woods, while others said her spirit cursed the land. The town's crops never seemed to thrive again, and strange occurrences continued to plague Bellwood. The locals still talk about the Black Witch with a shiver, and many believe that Agnes's restless spirit still roams the night, seeking revenge for the injustice done to her. The story of Agnes Harper serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of superstition and the consequences of turning to fear rather than understanding. In Bellwood, the tale of the Black Witch is a ghost story that continues to haunt the imaginations of those who dare to listen.